Okay, good afternoon and Happy New Year. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Development Management Review Committee. And I'd remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. Can I also remind remote members attending hybrid meetings where quasi-judicial matters are being considered, they will not be permitted to participate by audio only and must have their video and camera functions switched on at all times. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. So we'll start with item 1, apologies and substitutes.
Thanks, Convener. We have apologies for Councillor Clark.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Okay, I'm looking like that's no there. The minutes of the previous meeting, subject to, we're asked to approve the minutes from the 25th of November and the 3rd of December. Are these a true record? Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, we'll move on now to the one item of business we've got today, item 4, 10 to 11 Gardine Street, Freakham, Arbroath. And obviously we were on the site visit this morning, so it's all very fresh in our minds. I'll ask Ms Milne to present the planning slides again to refresh us even more, just so that we do that for, I think that's the normal practice, so we'll just ask her to do that. Over to you, Ms Milne.
Sorry, thank you, Convener. I will just share my screen. Sorry, I've got this on a, what am I trying to do? Start from a, there we go. Right, excellent. So, yes, the case before the members today is at 10 to 11 Gardine Street, Freakham, and it's for the demolition of 2 terraced dwelling houses in the erection of two-storey terraced and 1 single-storey detached dwelling house. This is the location plan that just shows, you can see the site outlined in red. You can see 10 and 11, the 2 cottages with the gap that allows access to the rear, the sort of 3 outhouses in the rear garden area, and then the garden area to the rear that backs onto the houses on Millgate. Again, this is just a closer up view. Number 13 is the Star Inn. So this is as existing, what we saw out when we were out on site today. So this is the rear elevation. There's some newer extensions that have been added on to the properties. And then this is the front. The gap is again, the site outlined in red, the 2 cottages, and then the gap that gives access is to the right of those. And this is the proposed site plan. So you can see the downtakings are the sort of orange dots. So the 2 new houses either side with a new penned access through the centre, 2 parking spaces for those 2 houses that front onto Gardine Street, and then 2 parking spaces in the street for them. You can see there the footway crossing, the existing footway crossing is to be removed and then moved further down the road to give access to the penned. And then the rear garden area, the single-storey bungalow with car parking for it as well, and the hammerhead to allow turning within the site. These are the proposed floor plans. So the 2 properties at the front onto Gardine Street, ground floors, and then the upper floor, say where they're joined, and then the ground floor plan for the single-storey new building in the rear garden area. And there are proposed elevations again, site outlined in red. So you can see the two new houses either side with the penned access in the centre that gives access through to the rear. And then below is just the same view, but from the rear garden looking back towards Gardine Street. Some sections just to show how the buildings sit. Oh. And then this is number 11. So this is the single-storey building in the garden area, the rear elevation, and then the front and the top right there, and then just the two side elevations. These are some photos which we saw today. It's a little less snowy in these of the existing cottages, and again the access and the star in to the right of them, and then the access top right looking from the street looking in, and then the opposite looking from the garden back out into the street. The top right is the new extensions in to the rear of the cottages, and you can just see some of the outbuildings on the right hand side of the pictures. The bottom left is the beer garden of the neighbouring Star Inn. The outbuildings, two timber sheds and a stone building, and then the garden area with the treed area to the back, and there's low stone wall to the Star Inn next door. And then the top right there is looking up, not the opposite direction of the Star Inn, looking the other way up the street. You can see up the gardens as you look up the houses on Gardine Street, and then just the rear garden view looking back at the existing houses. And that is the end of the presentation. I will stop sharing my window. I'll just double check if there's anything else. I think that's everything that we needed.
There was one question that came up on the site visit, and that was, are we clear what the extent of the garden was? Because there was a bit of doubt as to where it ended at the far end before we came to the property that would have been on, whatever it was, Millgate or whatever.
Sorry, I managed to get myself stuck on my presentation there. The drawings, the red line seems to show that it's the garden is at the rear is squared off. So I think when we've been looking at it, there is a stone wall at the rear that we kind of assumed was the extent of it. I'm just trying to find that one. Just share my screen again quickly. I don't know if you can see that when I've not got my camera on. So yeah, in this you can see, the garden is squared off at the back in this area with the trees where there was a sort of fenced off area. That whole thing does appear to be, yes, the extent. And then down at the bottom here with numbers 8 and 9, there was that. It's actually, looking at this, it's not exactly in line with what was on site, I would say, but that was the bit we were looking at. There's this sort of triangular area in 8 and 9 that is within their site, within their boundary. But when you're in the garden, it kind of looks like it's in the garden of 10 and 11. So that was that little odd bit there that we were saying. There's a bit that is actually part of the neighbouring houses, but when you're out on site, it almost looks as if it's part of the site because it's just a slightly odd shape. So hopefully that helps a bit.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a question from Councillor Beattie at the moment. So, Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, Fiona, that the image that you've got that shows the takedown part, it looks like that little triangular bit is part of the bit that's taken down. Can you show us that again, please?
Sure, I'll just find it. This one. Oh, that one. Sorry, click. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that maybe, can you see that? Yeah, so that does, yes. So what's in that is not Yeah, that's a better, because when you see the existing site plan, the actual the new rear extensions at the back of the cottages clearly aren't. Yeah, that's much more in line with what we saw on site. So yeah, so there is this bit in the front of it that would be getting taken down, and then it's just there's just a little triangular bit. Yeah, that shows it much better.
Okay, are you happy with that, Councillor Beattie?
Yeah, it's just that diagram makes it a bit clearer.
It was a bit ambiguous, I must admit, when we were on the site visit. Any other questions for Ms Milne or any other officers? Can I raise two issues? Obviously, there has been no BAT survey done for whatever reason. If members were minded to approve it, that is something that would need to be done, and that would need to be done before we took a decision, and that hasn't been done. So there's that issue to sort of park just for a minute. The second issue is the agent of change issue, which I think we briefly discussed when we dealt with this at the first meeting. And obviously we've had a look at it on site, so that would be another issue that we would have to try and resolve if members were minded to uphold the appeal. So I don't know whether maybe Mr. Petrie just wants to give us his view on the agent of change issue and how he sees things on that one.
Thank you, Convener. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, in terms of the agent of change principle, we do think there would be issues in line with this due to the fact that this property, the closest property, would be moved closer to the beer garden. It would also overlook the beer garden more so now than the previous one-storey property. There's a bit of a benefit from a stone wall there, which the current properties benefit from. Also, the abutting directly on to the inn, there is the potential perhaps for some structure-borne noise, which doesn't exist currently because of the gap there. So all these things considered together, we felt it was necessary to object based on the agent of change principle for this application.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess maybe just other thing we sort of discussed this on the site visit that obviously we're looking here at the planning issues, but there would presumably be some legal negotiation required between the applicant here and the owners of the Star Bar or Star Inn next to, because if they want to tag their new building onto an existing building, they're going to have to get permission to do that. And potentially this issue with the somewhat ambiguous rear structure where it seemed to be between whatever it was, the sort of house closest to the centre of the village, and then the next one where we weren't sure whether that was all part of one of the houses going to be knocked down or some of it was going over to the next house. So they would presumably have to, if that was the next house, there would clearly have to be agreements there between the two owners before anything could be done. But that's not a planning matter, but that would be a legal matter for these parties to sort out. And, I just wonder whether this agent of change issue could have been resolved between two parties, because they're clearly going to have to, if they were to go ahead, they would have to get agreement from the inn to join on to their building, and that would presumably be a discussion they would have to have. So I don't know, that was just my thinking on that one. Any other questions that any members have got? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Okay, the question is, do we have enough information now to determine this application or not? What are the views of members on that? You're saying yes, okay. Councillor Beattie, yes. Councillor Meehan?
Yes, I think I've got
You think you have? Okay, so I think I'm getting ahead that we feel we have enough information to determine. Okay, so I'll just go around the table in the usual way to get initial views from members. We don't have a local member here, but Councillor Nicholas lives closer than anyone else, is that right?
That's right. Right, thank you, Convener. This application at Gardine Street, Freegham, I have concerns which are not all relevant to the planning, but I do have to agree with the officers and not allow this to go forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. I found the site visit very helpful, but I would agree with the officer's decision on this application. There are a number of policies that do not comply with the proposed development. In my view, the proposed application would result in an overdevelopment of the site. Therefore, I would refuse this appeal on these grounds.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Meehan.
like my colleagues, I think the visit was very helpful, and also like my colleagues, I would be minded to actually go with the officers on this one and reject.
Okay, that's clear. And Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, just the same as my other colleagues. I've also got concerns, particularly about the agent of change principle and the plot sizes. So I would be happy to follow the officer's recommendation and refuse the appeal.
Okay, thanks. Well, that's fairly clear. 4 views for rejecting the appeal. I'd have to say that I had quite a lot of sympathy with the applicant's appeal, and I think a case could be made for approval, in my opinion, but I'm clearly in the minority, so there's no point wasting time on that. And clearly we don't need any further information because 4 members are saying that they uphold them, they're supporting the officer's decision. So I think without any further ado, I think we can say planning application 25/00266/full. The appeal is rejected for the reasons given in the original paper by officers. So thanks very much for your attendance today, and I'll let you get back home into the heat fairly soon because we've got snow falling here. Okay, thanks again for your attendance. Thank you.
Can you stop the light?